another video today. Something a little bit quick, a little bit easy, but something that I was going to do nonetheless. So may as well let you guys in on my thoughts. It is June 27th, and so we have about a week and a half worth of reveals from the announcement of the new expansion. And so I just threw together a little, slide deck kind of thing of all the cards and my thoughts on them, and we'll just go through them real quick. But just wanted to, get some of my predictions on paper, get some of my thoughts out there, see how well we do. It's always a fun little experiment to do. So we're going to start with class cards, and then we'll move on from class cards into the neutrals. There's a lot more neutrals than there are class cards revealed currently. And then as I'm recording this, there are currently more reveals happening. So you'll see this on the 27th, but it might be missing some of the reveals from the 27th since we're recording it on that day. But either way, let's just get straight into it. One thing that I do notice is I might want to get rid of this camera really quick, actually, because it's in the way of what we're doing. So, wrong one. There we go. And there we go. All right. That was just covering up a little bit of that. It's not like it's a big deal, but it covered up a little bit of text, so we'll hide that for now. Anyways, let's just start off nice and quick. We're in Death Knight, okay? Death Knight only has 2 reveals, so it'll be pretty solid. We got 2 mana, deal 3 damage, spend 3 corpses to return this to your hand at the end of your turn. So it's fine removal. It can go face, so that's good. If you want to run this because your deck generates corpses or you need a frost spell rather than down with the ship, then they're very comparable. And then since it comes back to your hand, it is technically like, you're putting a clock on your opponent. It's like kind of having a hunter hero power, infinite burn. Going to be pretty solid, definitely going to see play. I don't think it's going to define a deck, so I don't think it's going to be 5 out of 5, but I do think it's going to be really solid, definitely going to see play. Then we move on to Buttons, the first of the tourist cards. So if you are unaware, each of the classes gain a tourist legendary this set, and what tourist means is that while you're deck building and you put this tourist into your deck, you now have access to the other class expansion cards to put into your deck. So if I was to put in Buttons, he is a Shaman tourist. That means that I would be able to put in Shaman cards from this newest set into my deck, but only from this newest set. It does not involve any other Shaman cards. So it's definitely an interesting mechanic. Brings a little bit more depth because you got to think about exactly how you can use things in other classes too. So that's pretty interesting. And this one is a very good introduction to them as it is really, really strong. So its battle cries draw a spell of each spell school. That is really insane for something like Rainbow Death Knight that is running a bunch of different spell schools. There's also a Shaman card, which we'll look at later, called Cabaret Headliner, which combos extremely well with Buttons, as it's going to fill your hand with all the spell schools, and then that card interacts with spell schools, reducing their mana cost, and so you get a lot of mana cheat there. So that's probably going to be pretty solid. Gave that a 5 out of 5. Going to redefine Rainbow Death Knight almost for sure. Moving on. We only have 1 Demon Hunter card, so that's a little sad. A little bit, of a slow start for them. But we have Patches coming back. Patches the pilot. 1 mana, 1/1 with Battle Cry. Shuffle 6 parachutes into your deck that summon a 1/1 pirate with charge when drawn. So, pretty insane 1-drop. If you play it on 1, then obviously your win rate's going to skyrocket. Just the more chances you have at drawing the 1/1s. And Demon Hunter draws a ton. Right now its most common deck is the aggro Demon Hunter with all the Nagas, and the entire point of that deck is to draw your entire deck in 1 turn and combo off, and this just gives you a little bit more reach, a little bit more board control, some pings to figure out how you want to, better set up your 2 damage pings from the sharpshooter. So I think this just slots into almost every Demon Hunter deck. Even if you're playing Highlander control Demon Hunter, it's just occasionally some extra 1/1s in the early game, and that can be nuts. That could be extremely impactful. So Demon Hunter looking pretty good out of its 1 card. Moving on to Druid, we have another location. So locations have a very big impact this set. They seem to be a major thread. So everyone's getting a new one, and there's also a lot of cards that interact with locations. Druid has one of the probably best sets of locations to really kind of make things pan out in the long term with this set. There's going to be an 8/8 that you can make cost 0 by using locations, and this one's fine. Hiking Trail. It's a little expensive. 3 mana for 3 durability. Discover a taunt minion, and after you gain armor, you can reopen it and reuse it again. Like I said, a little expensive, but it's going to help you reduce the cost of your giants. It's going to give you some stall tools. That's really good. The other Druid locations only cost 1 mana, so you have Cenarian Hold that makes your choose ones not choose, and then you have the spell damage one. So just popping those, you're going to be able to get these giants off really, really quickly, and it's an integral part of that deck. By itself, I don't think it's like that incredible. Discovering taunt minions is like okay, but I'd rather be doing something else, because then I still have to play, like I still have to pay mana for the minion that I discovered. So unless I have nothing going on in my hand, there's almost anything I'd rather be doing than playing a random taunt minion. But in the use case of the Giants deck, I think it's going to be absolutely correct. So I would give it a 3.5. I'm going to bump it up to a 4.5. I almost want to give it a 5 out of 5 just because it enables this deck that I'm envisioning being insane, but I'm going to stick to a 4 out of 5. In the same vein, we have their legendary, the Cruise Captain Laura. 7 mana, 4/5, Battlecry, summon 2 random locations. And so this will be an important piece to help you like have some comebacks in games where you're not drawing your locations in this theoretical deck. But it comes in a little bit later than you would want, because you're going to want to be getting your giants out earlier than turn 7. So it'll still fit in there. It's definitely going to see play. The issue is, outside of this Giants deck, I'm not sure if it sees play anywhere else, mostly due to the fact that current Druid lists use the Summer Flower Child to tutor pretty specific minions, and so this getting in the way of that is not great. The other side of that coin is that if this is one of the only expensive cards you're running, it does get tutored by the Summer Flower Child. And so if you tutor it on the finale on 5, it gets cost reduced to you have a turn 6 one of these. So I'm really thinking that it's all going to come together for this Giants deck, and then outside of that, it's going to be a little bit flat. So went ahead and give her a 3 out of 5. Moving on to Mage, we have the most Mage cards by far for a class to talk about so far, and they seem to mostly be pushing 2 different archetypes. So we're going to be looking at Tempo Mage, and we're going to be looking at Big Spell Mage. Overview, Big Spell Mage is looking absolutely nuts. I think that anytime the Big Spell Mage is viable, it's going to be just ever present in the meta. It's just insane, and this is giving it a lot of good tools. And then outside of that, Tempo Mage actually is looking kind of interesting. It's all going to depend on exactly what 1-drops and 2-drops we have for Aggro Mage, because ideally we want to end up setting up this 3/3 that we're about to talk about and really be able to protect it. But if we don't have good early game, then it's going to be difficult to set that up. With that being said, though, our first card is a 3 mana 3/3 Marooned Archmage. Your first spell each turn costs 2 less. So when I was originally thinking of this, I just thought it was a 3/3 that doesn't really do much. It's going to die. It has pseudo taunt, so like I guess that kind of matters in a minion based deck. But like people are going to kill this as soon as possible. It's like threat number 1, just because cost reduction is so important. And so I wasn't really thinking there's going to be a lot you can do with it. However, in the case where it doesn't get killed, let's imagine we have a 1-drop, we have a 2-drop. We're completely even or ahead on board going into turn 3. We drop this, we kill their 2-drop with a 2-mana spell. They're not able to answer it, and then turn 4, we follow up with the Tourist card that we will soon see in Mage. And then we get another, cost reduced spell, and it triggers that guy. So that could all come together. That could piece together pretty well. But I'm a little bit skeptical of it. So Tempo Mage looking okay. This guy is going to be integral to it if it ends up, manifesting. But I'm still kind of iffy on whether it's going to be viable enough. Moving on, we have a 1-mana Sea Breeze Chalice, one of the drinks. There's a little set of drink cards amongst a bunch of classes. There's a neutral card that lets you get some drinks. They're all cards that have multiple uses, similar to the Barrel of Monkeys that we currently have, and the Bunch of Bananas. I like that effect. I think it's a pretty strong one to have. I would be totally fine with them printing more cards that have that. Pretty interesting. This one, deal 2 damage randomly split among all enemies. So it's cheap, it's consistent. Well, it's actually pretty inconsistent since you can't even guarantee they're going to be killing him. You know, like the one drop that you're hoping to kill with this, you might just whiff and hit face. But you get so many uses of it. It's so cheap. Any spell damage is going to be nuts with it. 1 mana spells, especially in Mage, are just always powerful. So I'm going to reluctantly give this a 4 out of 5. Based on the fact that it's a strong one cost card, I want to just give it 5 out of 5. But I don't particularly see it like being the most important card in the deck that it fits into. Like, is it going to be okay? Is it nice to get Alpha Discovers for sure? But by itself, it's a 1 cost spell. So always going to be solid, but nothing to get too hype about. 4 out of 5. Then we move on to the location that Mage is gaining, Tide Pools. 3 mana, 3 durability. Discover a spell that costs 3 or less, and after you cast a spell, reopen this. So for 3 mana, you're gaining 3 discovers. That's pretty solid. It combos really well with the 3/3 because all the things you're discovering are going to cost 3 or less. So most of the time, it's going to be free because of the Marooned Archmage. So that's really cool too. It's really good to keep you out of, you know, top deck situations. Anything that gives you consistent generation, I really dig. You know, there's a lot of games that are going pretty long nowadays, and so being able to get more resources fairly cheaply, there's, you know, reason to be said that that's really worthwhile. But unfortunately, I do think it's just going to be a little bit too slow. So even in the Tempo Mage deck, I'm not sure if I want to be spending spending 3 mana on a location. I want to be building board presence. I want to be pushing face damage. Like this can discover us face damage, I suppose, but it just feels a little bit behind the curve. So went ahead and gave that a 2. Moving on, we have a set of incredible cards that are all going to be ranked 5 or 4 out of 5 because Big Spell Mage, I believe, is going to be absolutely cracked this set. We're going to start off with Cephalopods, 5 mana, 5/6, Battlecry. The next spell you draw is cast when drawn. It's obviously an incredible enabler. Makes the 6 mana spell we're about to talk about even better because sometimes you don't have to pay for it. If it ever hits Sunset Volley, you just win the game. If you ever hit the 10 mana spell that I should know the name of, but it's the one that recasts a spell of every mana cost. If you've hit that and you've played anything else, you know, prior. So if this comes down on turn 5, it's absolutely nuts if you hit basically anything. And if you played in the later game and it hits the 10 mana spell, then that's absolutely nuts too, right? So this is just the best enabler Big Spell Mage has probably ever had. Very excited to experiment with Cephalopods. And in a similar vein, the 6 mana spell that it can, you know, have cast when drawn would be Under the Sea. Draw a different spell and summon a random minion of that spell's cost. So obviously, huge big Spell Mage support there too. I think the deck's going to be cracked 5 out of 5. And the other big spell that it's getting as its payoff is Tsunami. 8 mana, summon 3/3/6 water elementals with freeze, and they attack random enemies. It's a payoff spell, so it's going to see play. It's an 8 mana spell, so it fits in as your 8 mana spell for the 10 mana spell, so it's going to see play. And it's really good with King Tide if you get it on turn 5. So this will see a lot of play. Looking forward a little bit with Big Spell Mage, I'm not sure if this makes the cut in like Wild or anything, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 instead of a 5 out of 5, just because I think there's probably better hits than Tsunami. But in Standard, with Big Mage support, this card's going to be a part of that deck. It's going to be pretty important. If it's somehow found out that you run too many big spells, I could see this one maybe getting cut, which is the only reason I'm not giving it a 5 out of 5 as well. But Tsunami, Big Spell Mage looking pretty solid. And we're jumping around a little bit, but since we're finishing up the Big Spell Mage set, let's talk about King Tide. 4 mana, 4/4, Battlecry. Both players' spells cost 5 until the end of your next turn. So this has a very similar effect to Naga Sea Witch. Naga Sea Witch absolutely tormented Wild for a little while. So I imagine that this is going to see a lot of play. It's not quite as good as that, obviously. But I also think something important to think about is that other classes don't really seem to have extremely expensive spells revealed yet, and so there's nothing that you're really worried about them playing into you. Like, if you play this on turn 4, they now have a turn on turn 5 to play a 5-mana spell, but there's not that many big hits for them right now. They pass whatever they do to you, and then you get your effect for 1 turn, and you pop off with a big spell. I think that most of the time, you're going to come out ahead in that scenario. And so King Tide, 5 out of 5, 100%. Going back a little bit, we have Rising Waves, 3 mana, deal 2 to all minions, and if none die, deal 2 more. This is just Volcanic Potion, which was 3 mana, deal 2 to all minions, except sometimes it's even better, because sometimes it's deal 4. So Volcanic Potion, especially in Highlander decks at the time, it saw a little bit of play. It was definitely used. It's still occasionally used in Wild, especially in Highlander decks. And so that card with upside, that's probably going to see play. There's a lot of AoEs that deal 1 coming into this new set for whatever reason. And so I think that the dealing 2 will set this apart a lot from the AoEs that people are going to be expecting and playing around. So pretty solid, 5 out of 5. 1 mana spell again, go with the flow. Choose a minion, and if it's an enemy, freeze it, and if it is friendly, give it spell damage +1. Spell damage, pretty good. Gonna maybe see play in the Tempo Mage list. I think that you're most likely going to be seeing it off of Discovers rather than actually putting it into your list, because there's not a ton of like insane uses for spell damage right now. It's not like we have a Sorcerer's Apprentice style OTK list going on. We don't have Ross anymore, where this would have obviously been insane with Ross. So I don't particularly see this impacting things too much, but we'll see. I'm wary to give a 1-cost spell anything that low of a ranking, just because 1-cost spells are so efficient, but I don't see this one being that impactful. Gonna give it a 3, could maybe push it to a 2 if I wanted to be a little more spicy with my take. And then now we're looking at the Tempo Mage payoff that I was talking about, where if you're able to set up your Marooned Archmage on 3 and have it live into 4, then on turn 4 you get to play Rayla Sand Sculptor, Paladin Tourist, and after you cast a spell, summon a random 2-cost minion and give it Divine Shield. This originally, I didn't think it was going to be that good. Thinking about the Marooned Archmage synergy, I think it could definitely pop off a little bit more. And the fact that the flood that you're making has Divine Shield means it's going to be really inefficient against a lot of AoEs. So it's going to make a very sturdy board too. So I could see this being annoying. I can see getting high rolled by Tempo Mage getting very annoying, but I'm just not sure if the deck is going to have enough consistency, because there's no way for you to tutor this guy on 4. And I still am not sure exactly what their 1 and 2 drop situation is going to be looking like. So I'm going to reservedly give this a 3. It could be a dud. It could do nothing. But I think Tempo Mage has got a couple legs. Hopefully, you know, you don't want to waste legendary slots on dog shit, so hopefully it's not horrible. Alrighty. Moving on to Paladin. We have a couple, and then I'm pretty sure that Paladin cards are getting revealed today. So this will be, you know, not having the full picture, but this is where we're at. We got Volley Maul, 3 mana 3/2 weapon. After your hero attacks, get a 1-cost sunscreen that gives +1/+2. So the spells that it gives, I imagine there's going to be more synergy for. There's already synergy with the new Lanessa with all of these, obviously. But I just find it difficult to think that a Paladin deck is going to run a different weapon than the hand buff weapon right now. Like, these sunscreens need to have big payoffs if you're trying to get me to not just buff my entire hand by 1/1. Like, yeah, it comes out a turn earlier. Yeah, it does a little more damage, but it gives up lifesteal. It gives up a lot of expected value in return stats from hand buff. And I don't see it making the cut when compared to the lifesteal weapon. So that's going to be a 1 out of 5. That might be the first 1 out of 5 that I've given, and maybe I'll end up being wrong. Maybe buff Paladin is insane. You know, Librams originally were pretty nuts, so maybe they have a sort of spiritual successor resurgence, but I don't quite see it yet. Then we have 4 mana 3/4 Grill Master. Battlecry, draw your lowest cost card, and Death Rattle, draw your highest cost card. Oh, hi there, kitty cat. You're getting in the way a little. That's okay. You're gonna lay down? Hi, dum dum. So, Grill Master. It's basically chill Fallen Baron, but even more insane because you're kind of tutoring stuff. You get the incredible reload for basically any Paladin archetype out of this card because no deck is going to be upset with drawing their highest cost card. You're getting your Talon effect, which is a legendary effect. Death Rattle, draw your highest cost card. And you're getting it on a common that you're going to be able to run 2 of, which also has even more upside because it draws you a card when you play it. Like, easiest 5 out of 5 in the entire world. 4 mana 3/4, get 2 cards, and they're insane. Like, I don't know. I think that's an absolutely incredible reload tool for Paladin. So basically every deck is going to run that for a millennia. Moving on, we have 6 mana Power Spike. Deal 4 damage and give a random friendly minion +4/+4. So I've been experimenting with Aura Paladin, as we know, and that I've been running Holy Cowboy, so I remember that the synergy existed. So with Holy Cowboy, you can set up that as your turn 3 and have this be your turn 4. You kill a minion, maybe buff him, got a big threat, and that's kind of cool, you know. You probably have some other minions at that point too, so like it's a pretty tempo-y play. I could see Holy Paladin potentially making an impact. The issue is that Highlander decks are still looking like the nuts, and so anything, you know, that's slightly funny and efficient is not going to work out very well. And I think that this card is a little bit too expensive to actually be efficient, and so I gave it a 3 out of 5 just because I want Holy Paladin to work, but it's probably a 2 out of 5, 1 out of 5 style card. Moving on, we got Lifeguard, 4 mana 2/7 Taunt. With Battlecry, your next spell has Lifesteal. So this is an incredible target in hand buff Paladin. 7 health is absolutely insane on a Taunt minion, and it's only going to go up because you're buffing everybody. The Battlecry effect, I think, has not a whole ton of use case in Paladin specifically, but Mage has the Paladin Tourist, and potentially you want to tech in like one of the Lifeguards, because then you have some lifesteal for an AoE or something. I could see that mattering a little bit for that case, and because the Tourist stuff is new and cool, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I think that it's going to be really good in hand buff Paladin, and I like the idea that it could show up somewhere else. So, interesting card for sure. Big stat pile. Then we have, let's talk about Sandcastle first. We'll do the Rogue Taurus right after. But Sandcastle, 5 mana 3/8 with Rush, and after this attacks, transform it into a location. And the location is pretty interesting. So it's give a friendly minion plus attack and Rush, and then it turns back into Sandcastle. And originally it's going to be +3 attack and Rush, but if you have buffed your Sandcastle, so let's say your Sandcastle is a 5/10, then it will instead give a friendly minion +5 attack. And then obviously as you use the durability, it will lose a health when it respawns. But absolutely insanely valuable card. I think that it's basically the nuts legendary for Paladin, and it's going to be in every deck forever. It does contest the 5 slot with Toy Captain, and so that's a little bit annoying. But it's such a free slot into hand buff Paladin that it's definitely going to see consistent play. Easy 5 out of 5, and I expect that it will see play elsewhere as well. And then our last Paladin card is the Rogue Tourist, Sunsapper Lanessa. Your spells that cost 2 or less cast twice. So this is a little bit of your payoff for your sunscreens. They're going to cost 0 because they cost 2. Whoa, completely misunderstood that for a second. I was going to say that they get cost reduced, but no, they double cast. So you're still paying 1 mana for, like, now it's +2/+4. Like, sure, that's cool. But is there not better things you can be doing? There's got to be better spells. Now, the issue is, what rogue spells do you maybe put in your deck that you then want to cast twice? that could be really, really cool. That's something I haven't explored a ton of. But I just don't think we know enough yet about what it's going to offer, because there haven't been, many rogue reveals at all, and Paladin has not been finished at all either. So I'm going to just stick in the middle of the road for now and call it a 3 out of 5 until we know what kind of support it has. But I'm not as hype about it as I would have thought. I see the use case, but I am not sure if there's actually going to be the use case. All right. And now we'll finish it off. There's 2 classes that didn't have any reveals, that being Hunter and Priest. But we have 1 card apiece for Rogue, Warlock, Shaman. Let's talk about the Shaman one really quick, just because we already had started mentioning that would be good in Death Knight. So it's a 4-mana 3/3 with Battlecry. Reduce the cost of a spell of each school in your hand by 2. So if you buttons and you draw every spell school that you have, and then you follow up with this, then you're probably getting between 6, 8, 10 mana worth of reduction, assuming that you drew a lot of spells because you're Rainbow Death Knight and you have a lot of spell schools. So I think you can consistently get -4, -6 from this, and if you're ever getting anything above that, then obviously that's even more incredible. But I think even just a 4-mana 3/3 get 4 cost reduction is going to be really good, especially because if you're cost reducing frost spells, especially burn frost spells, then you can get extra copies of them, and then they're cost reduced. Thank you, Ellie, for copying that to my clipboard. And so you're going to have a lot of burst potential. I think there's a lot of different ways you can mess around with this, but I think it sees play in both Shaman and in Death Knight, so that's an easy 5 out of 5. Moving back, let's finish up Rogue. Only has 1 card, 2 mana, get 2 random 1-cost spells that are from other classes. This combos really well with a neutral card that got revealed, Concierge. It's a 3-mana 3/4 that your cards from other classes cost 1 less. So it fits directly into like Excavate Rogue. Seems pretty solid. This card might be a little slow, might seem like not enough value, but I don't know. 1-cost spells pretty strong. Having something that's constantly giving you opponent class cards when that's a important factor sometimes is good. Anytime that, while we have Velkarok in Standard, the charge guy that discovers cards and reduces them for Rogue, whenever we have that in Shadow Step, you're just going to need ways to make sure you can generate early spells from other classes, cards from other classes. So now we have like Swashbuckler, we have Prep, Petty Theft, and that's just another way to get us started way quicker than we should be, because that deck, can pop off as early as turn 2 and 3 sometimes, getting like 9 face damage and 3 extra spells and stuff like that. So I think that it's very unassuming. I think people are going to look at it and think that it's not very good, but I actually really think Petty Theft is going to see a lot of play. Going to give that a 4 out of 5. And our final class card is going to be Malted Magma from Warlock. 2 mana, deal 1 damage to all enemies. That includes the face, and there are 3 drinks, 3 usages left. So it's a solid AoE. There's obviously multiple uses, so you can combo them together and get a big AoE. You can use them at separate turns to set up stuff, or just deal with little threats. It's extremely versatile, so I like that. Any spell damage with it is going to be nuts, obviously. So you might even see like Blood Mage Thalnos again. Blood Mage Thalnos with Malted Magma, Blood Mage Thalnos with Defile. That's a lot of AoE if there's board-based decks. I could like that. The only issue I potentially see is that Warlock has so many good tools that this might not be good enough somehow. I think I'm underestimating the drink effect in this case, but like Warlock is already one of the better control decks. It runs a ton of removal. It's got very efficient removal. So I'm not sure if this makes the cut, but I think it'll make the cut. Went ahead and just gave it a 3 out of 5. I should probably give it a 4, but we'll see. I'm a little skeptical just because of how good Warlock is right now that it's going to use new tools. But if it's going to get new tools, this is a pretty solid one to get. All right, and now we are on to the neutrals. The neutrals are going to try and jam through a little bit quicker just because obviously we haven't gone through every like scenario of every class where this might be useful yet, what we're missing. There's a lot of different things going on, but neutrals are a lot easier to evaluate, kind of just like, hey, will this probably find somewhere where it's useful? So we're going to go a little bit quicker, and then we'll stop for ones that have, a little bit more interesting use cases. So let's start off with Drink Server, 2 mana 2/2 Murloc Pirate. Death Rattle, get a random drink. Obviously, we haven't seen all of the drink spells yet, so we're not positive how good it's going to be. But 2 mana 2/2, fine stats, dual tribe, really strong. Generation, always solid. Gonna probably see some play as just a generic 2-drop. Weapons Attendant, 6 mana 6/4 Pirate. Battlecry, if you control another pirate, equip a random weapon from your deck. Now, the issue with this card is it's kind of a bad stats for its cost. 5 mana 6/4. It skews aggressive, which is fine because it's going to be in a more aggressive deck almost always. I don't know. I would have preferred maybe a 5/5 over a 6/4. I'm looking at this guy, and actually I thought that he was a 5 mana card, and now I noticed that he's a 6 mana card, and that's even more expensive. Definitely am not digging his stats. On top of him being expensive and not very good by himself, he also has an additional requirement. Not that it's one that's very difficult to get. You just need another pirate on board. But sometimes you're not going to have a pirate, and then it's completely useless. It's just a complete whiff. And I'm not even sure if there's any playable weapons that are expensive that are worth cheating out. Like, you could take it as like, oh, if I cheat out a 4 mana weapon, like, that's still valuable. And like, yeah. But am I running a 6 mana 6/4 to sometimes cheat out like a 3 or 4 mana weapon? No, I'm running it to cheat out like Woe Cleaver in Wild. So does Standard have its version of Woe Cleaver? I'd be skeptical that I'm missing one. Scrapbooking Student, 5 mana 5/5 Battlecry, summon a copy of a friendly location. I do think this will see play somewhere. It being a 5/5 or a 5 mana card kind of sucks because it's a little bit slow, but a lot of the locations that are new seem to be costing 3. So in my head, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, oh, most of the locations cost like 1, and so a 5 mana card to copy that kind of blows. But with the new ones, it might be a little bit more viable. Copying even like the Evolve one right now, or there's that legendary that gets you the locations from the future. Like, if you copy one of those in Paladin, that's kind of sick. So I think it'll see play somewhere. It does mean that other classes have a little bit more chance of doing the location giant, so that's cool too. Gonna give it a solid 3.5 or 3 out of 5. Moving on to drop the Housekeeper Robot. It is like the most mid 2-drop I've ever seen. It doesn't do anything by itself. If aggro decks are absolutely nuts, then the armor is like a nice benefit, I suppose. But I'd be surprised if anyone's excited about Housekeeper Bot. Gonna give it a 2. It would be a 1 because it's just kind of generic filler, but armor matters sometimes, especially if aggro decks are nuts. So you never know. If you're 2 mana 2/3 that does nothing, if it turns into a 2 mana 2/3 that gets you 6 armor, that's worthwhile. Tidepool Pupil, 1 mana 2/1 Battlecry. If you've cast 3 spells while holding this, discover one of them. This is one of the best neutral cards that I think I've seen. I do think I could have switched it to a 5 out of 5, but I'm just not positive exactly where it's going to see play outside of Mage. But it's Rewind on a stick. It reminds me a lot of Commander Savara, which was the Mage legendary that absolutely tore apart Ladder for a while. I had an amazing time playing Highlander Mage and Tempo Mage, and like just there's so many archetypes that I played with Commander Savara where getting copies of stuff is it's just an incredible effect. Especially now you're not getting 3 cards out of it. You're obviously only getting 1 because you're discovering, but it's a really strong effect. If you're casting spells, they probably started in your deck. So if you could run an extra copy of one of them, would you? Probably. Absolutely insane. Occasionally a dead draw because you do have to have been casting spells while holding it. So that's another reason to maybe dock it not to a 5 out of 5. I'm gonna be happy with 4 out of 5 for that guy. Bloodsail Recruiter, 2 mana 4/1 Pirate with Battlecry. Discover a pirate. Random 2-drop for pirates, gonna be insane. It gives you reload, which pirate decks are gonna need, and it's one of the only ways to discover the 6-drop that is a 6/6 that sometimes has charge. So it's going to be in like every pirate deck because it's a way to try and get the 6/6, and it's just a good card. 2 mana 4/1's a fine stat line for an aggressive deck, and discover a pirate's absolutely nuts. 5 out of 5. Here's my boy, the Concierge. I think it's going to be absolutely dog shit except in everything but Rogue, but I could see it in Rogue, and hopefully I'm wrong and see some play elsewhere because I really dig it. I don't know why. I don't see other classes really having, like, I don't see this being a good enough reason to run with the tourist cards unless there's some sort of like OTKs with getting little spells. I don't see it having wide usage, but I do like it in Rogue, so give it a 2 out of 5. Lamplighter, 3 mana, 3/2 elemental, battlecry, deal 1 damage, and improved by each turn you've played an elemental in a row. This just seems like a less consistent gyre worm. I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5, and I really hope that on day 1 there's a clip of someone that does like 16 damage with this guy somehow. They've just been playing the game and like getting stalled out all game, and then it wins because they've somehow managed to play an elemental every turn. But I think I'd rather just have 3 mana deal 3 consistently compared to 3 mana deal 1 and sometimes deal like maybe 5. Overplanner, 3 mana 3/3 battlecry, discover 3 cards in your deck to put on top in that order. I also have just realized that like this doesn't actually do anything versus fatigue. I had written this out, this little text here. Bad but interesting tech versus fatigue, because I thought that you discovered 3 cards and then decided to put them on your deck in a certain order, so you're adding 3 cards to your deck. That's not what this read at all. So I completely misevaluated this card. I gave it a 2 when I thought that it did something completely different. Let's see, on the fly, discover 3 cards in your deck to put on top. That's pretty powerful. That's pretty fucking good, actually. That could definitely be like a 4 out of 5 card. So we'll take the L on that one already, and I'm going to say that Overplanner actually sees a little bit of play. I don't think it's going to be a staple anywhere. I'm not sure the effect's actually that good either way. It's kind of just a 3 mana 3/3 do nothing, but you can like kind of try and make your draw a little better. So, and I don't know. We can pretend this card didn't exist because I was not prepared for that. But I'm gonna give it like a 3, and it probably never sees play, and so it should be a 1 anyways, even though I misevaluated it or misread it. 3 mana 2/4 battlecry, give a friendly pirate Wind Fury. Gonna be absolutely nuts. Pirates are obviously seeing play. They're getting a ton of support. Wind Fury is a hard keyword to come by. 5 out of 5. Gonna be an aggressive staple for sure. Hi, Eddie. Bayfin Body Builder, 5 mana 4/7 Murloc. After a minion is summoned for your opponent during your turn, silence and destroy it. So obviously a really good effect versus anything with Death Rattles. You can combo with Dirty Rat to pull things out of their hand and then instantly kill them. It's going to definitely see play in Highlander decks, I think, because of the interaction with Dirty Rat. But I'm not sure yet if there's going to actually be enough Death Rattles around for you to care about anything else. But like, if you play against the 2/4 Excavate Treasure guy that summons a 2-drop, and you play this, and then you kill the taunt, and it summons a 2-drop, it dies. That's kind of cool. And I mean, having a Murloc with high health is kind of nice. Maybe that matters for Menagerie decks. I know there was a guy that hit Legend with Menagerie Warrior like 2 weeks ago. That was an interesting list. So maybe it sees a little bit of play. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because of the Dirty Rat combo. I think that will probably see play. But by itself, standalone, kind of bad. Snoozin' Zookeeper, 7 mana 5/8 battlecry. Summon an 8/8 beast for your opponent, and it attacks all of their minions. I think this card is going to be a little bit too expensive. It's a little bit too weird and wacky to actually be useful, but I really do like the idea. I don't expect it to see a lot of play, though, so 2 out of 5. Coconut Cannoneer, 2 mana 1/4 pirate. After an adjacent minion attacks, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. It's token support, so that's kind of cool. You can put it in the Demon Hunter deck with the 1/1 chargers, and that's kind of cool. It's cheap, and pirates like cheap things, but its stats kind of blow. It's a 1/4. It's obviously a supportive card. I don't know. I'm a little up in the air about it. It's a pirate, and it's cheap, and it does damage, so like it's gonna see play. So I gave it a 3, but I'm not too hype about it. I would much rather, in fact, have Hosen Roughhouser, 3 mana 2/4 pirate. Whenever another friendly pirate attacks, give it 1/1. I think that I like getting 1/1 instead of getting little random damage pings most of the time. Obviously, there's a difference in the cost, so they don't come out at the exact same time. But when you just look at these two next to each other, it's like, do I really want to waste a card slot on this if I have better 2-drops? Maybe I just don't have better 2-drops, and this is fine. But I really dig the Roughhouser more. Beached Whale, 7 mana, 4/20. Battlecry, deal 10 damage to this minion. We've had a whole host of cards before that are like the damaged minions. Injured Blade Master way back in the day saw play. Damaged Stegatron saw a little bit of play in Res Priest. We do not have resurrection effects as of now, I don't believe. And this one's not a mech either, so like Damaged Stegatron being a mech mattered sometimes. There were some cool interactions with that. But I don't really see Beached Whale seeing any standard play. It's a cool card. I like that it's around, but pretty bad. 1 out of 5. Cryopractor, 3 mana, 3/3. Battlecry, give a minion +3/+3 and freeze it. I think that you need a very specific deck that wants to use this. I don't think any deck is going to put this in. I don't think any deck is going to run this. If you want a freeze effect, you have Glacial Shard. If you want a freeze effect, you can play Mage. There is some taunt generation and some like funny stuff, so maybe you generate some taunt minions, then you give one +3/+3. But like, why are you wasting a card slot in your deck on this, man? That's a 1 out of 5 easy call. Resort Valet, 4 mana, 3/5 pirate. Battlecry, discover a card from the newest expansion. Really cool thematically. I like that it's around. It's pretty funny. You can sometimes get it off the 2 mana 4/1 pirate, and then you're discovering more discovers, and we always like discovering more discovers. Got to chain that together. But obviously bad card, 1 out of 5. Terrible Chef, 3 mana, 2/1. Battlecry, summon a 0/2 Nerubian Egg, and Death Rattle, destroy it. I absolutely love this card. I don't know exactly where it's going to find a home, but I imagine in like Evolve Shaman maybe, in any token deck. I see this in Hunter probably. In any aggressive deck, I could see this in Buff Paladin if Buff Paladin works out. This is just a lot of value for, a little shitty 3 mana 2/1. So I really dig him. I think he's going to see a lot of play. 4 out of 5. Wavepool Thrasher. Battlecry, give all minions -1/-1, and Death Rattle, give all other minions +1/+1. I don't really see this ever seeing any play unless there's decks that spam out a million 1/1s, and you can get instant value out of the -1/-1. Obviously, minions can be damaged, so if you leave things at 1 HP, this also works. But I just don't see it being consistent enough. 4 mana for like a 1 damage AoE on a stick that also hurts your minions. Like, I don't really fuck with it. 1 out of 5. Sleepy Resident, 4 mana 3/5 taunt, Death Rattle, all other minions fall asleep. Senjin finally back. Senjin good? It might actually be good. Taunt obviously already is gonna be like a good stall tool, block stuff. Making the other minions fall asleep is like mega taunt. I think this could be absolutely huge. And there's not any silence really. There's like Deafen and the Librarian. So like maybe this gets so good that you need to run silence in your aggro decks. That would be insane. But you could get a lot of value out of this. The more I talk about it, the more I want to bump this to a 4. I might bump this to a 4 out of 5. Travel Agent, 2 mana 2/2. Battlecry, discover a location from any class. It's a 2/2. It's fine stats. It's more pirate fodder. It's a little slow because you're not in most decks where you're playing a 2 mana 2/2 pirate, you're not going to want to be spending your next turn playing a 3 mana location. There's other things you can be doing, but I could see it, working out. And it's a small tool for decks that are trying to make the giant work, and I really love this giant, dude. This giant I think is going to be huge. So 3 out of 5. Bumbling Bellhop, taunt, 3 mana 3/3. Battlecry, if you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more, summon a copy of this. When I was thinking about this, I was comparing it to Serenite Chain Gang. I was comparing it to the 3 mana 3/2 combo Rush Pirate from Rogue, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more effect, it's actually kind of annoying. You could run this in Big Spell Mage because it's a minion and you're probably gonna have big spells. It's got taunt. That's kind of cool. Outside of that, maybe you run some expensive spells in Warrior, but am I putting this in my Warrior deck? I don't think so. Maybe in Warlock. I don't think I'm putting it in my Warlock deck. The Druid probably not. Nourish costs 5, I guess, but I just couldn't find a place where this really fits in. which is kind of weird for 3 mana, potentially a 6/6 worth of stats. But like, I just don't see where it fits in, you know? So I gave it a 2. Customs Enforcer, 3 mana, 2/5. Enemy cards that didn't start in their deck cost 2 more. Gotta always love getting bad tech cards. Most tech cards are obviously bad. That's kind of the point. But now we got some tech against randomly generated stuff. Yay! I don't think this is gonna see like any play. 2 out of 5. All right, 6 mana, 6/7 package dealer. After you draw a card, 50% chance to draw another one. This is an ogre. It's got good stats for its cost, and it's pretty solid. That's gonna be a 5 out of 5 card right there. Octomasseuse, 4 mana, 1/8, deals octuple damage to minions. I'm not sure in standard there's gonna be enough synergy for this to actually be useful. It's really good with rush and or lifesteal or a combination of both. But really the only way to do that would be through spark bots right now. So you could maybe see it in like rogue or hunter, but I just don't see it having enough value. Health is a lot. But like if I'm playing rogue with spark bots, don't I just want to be running the Playhouse Giant anyways instead of a 4 mana 1/8? So gave it a 2 out of 5. Maybe it sees a little bit of experimentation, but just not that great, I don't think. 4 mana 5/4, Carry On Grub. Battlecry, get a 1-cost suitcase and pack the top 2 cards of your deck into it. 4 mana 5/4, kind of draw 2 cards. Absolutely dig it. Love it a lot. Gonna give it a 5 out of 5. Gonna see play all over the place, I hope. Mixologist, 3 mana 2/3. Battlecry, craft a custom 1-cost potion. I really missed potion crafting. I love Kazakis. These kinds of effects where it's kind of annoying for a newer player because you don't know all the effects you can possibly get or what you can play around. But like at a high level, dude, no, there's so much agency and variability with these kinds of effects. Like it's so much fun. I don't know. I love this card. It's pretty insane. It's gonna be in like every Highlander deck ever made. It's crazy with Sonya too in Rogue because you can get more of your potions sometimes. I guess maybe crazy is overhyping it a little, but it's good with Sonya. And so I give it a 5 out of 5. I think it's going to see play all over the place. And now we move on to maybe my favorite card of the entire set so far. Seaside Giant, 10 mana, 8/8, costs 2 less for each time you've used a location this game. Free 8/8s are fucking good, man. We have learned this already. So free 8/8s are going to get a 5 out of 5. I think it's mostly going to see play in Druid, but it might see play in a little bit of other places. Free 8/8s are 5 out of 5 worthy, guys. You should know by now. 6 mana 6/6 has charge if this didn't start in your deck. So this is going to decide some games. Obviously, there's the 2 mana 4/1 pirate that I believe is like the only really consistent way to discover it right now. It's not even consistent because there's a fuckload of pirates. So you have to think about it constantly when you're playing against pirate decks. You have to be aware that they could have 6 burst damage. But the card is obviously just like dog shit. You're never going to put it in a deck because obviously. And sometimes you'll discover it like, I'm going to guess 1 out of 8 games, 1 out of 10 games. I don't know. Like, I just don't see it being that important. But the fact that it exists, you're going to have to play around it when playing against pirate decks. So that opens up a little bit of, interesting paths. I'm just going to give it a 1. I'll give it a 2. Because sometimes you'll win games with it. Adaptive Amalgam, 1 mana 1/2, all types. Death Rattle, shuffle this into your deck and it keeps any enchantments. This might be the best 1-drop that we've ever seen printed. If you can buff it with literally anything, it just gets better and better. And it's every single tribe, so it's going to fit into every tribe deck that you ever want. Do I know exactly what I'm going to use this in yet? No. But I see almost no world where this does not see play all over the place. So I'm going to give that a 5 out of 5. Crazy 1-drop. And we're almost at the end here, guys. I know it's been a long video. Appreciate if you stuck it out. And if you have any, thoughts, opinions about the cards that you want to put in the comments below, we can have some back and forth. Maybe I'm off base on a lot of stuff and I have no idea. So let me know. Got AFK. 5 mana 0/5. At the end of your turn, give all other friendly minions that didn't attack +2/+2. I have spent at least like an hour trying to figure out what the fuck to do with this card, man, and I have no idea. I don't even have a single use case that I've come up with. Maybe I'm missing something apparent. Maybe there's writing on the wall that I don't see. But like, what the fuck is this card, man? This seems terrible. So I hope someone proves me wrong. Again, looking forward to like the week 1 Hearthstone lucky moments from Trollden. That's like, here's all the shitty legendaries going insane. But like this seems terrible, man. Moving on, 3-mana 3/3 Gorgon Zormu. Battle cry. Get a 2-cost cheese that summons 3 1-cost minions, and it upgrades each turn to then summon higher cost minions. I think pretty much any deck can run this. It's going to be good in aggro. It's going to be good in midrange. It'll be good in Highlander. 3 minions for 2 mana of any cost is going to be nuts. 5 out of 5. Then we got Grifta, Trusted Venda. 4-mana 4/5 Battlecry. Discover an amazing amulet to give to both players, but the enemies is phony. And so we have all the options down here. Ooh, I don't like that effect. That was I did not. Oh, what the fuck? I don't like that. All right, let's not mess with that. Anyways, there's a bunch of 1-mana effects. Take control of an enemy minion until the end of turn, deal 6 damage, summon a random 4-cost and give it taunt, get 3 legendary cards, restore 12 to your hero, draw 3, and reduce the cost of all cards in your hand by 1. And then the phony versions are like a lot worse, but you're giving your opponent a cheap, efficient card. So instead of like deal 6, it's deal 6 to a minion. Instead of restore 12, it's restore 12 and then take 6. So it fucks with them a little bit. I think it's funny, but I see this being played in every single Highlander deck. 5 out of 5. Gonna just be incredible value for anybody, basically. It has so many situations that you're gonna find one that's useful. And once again, kind of nuts with Sonya. And then we have our last card, because we'll talk about Marin, but we've all played with Marin. Marin's been insane during pre-release. I expect him to stick around in a lot of decks. He's a 5 out of 5. Our last real card is Incendious. 6-mana 2/10 elemental. At the end of your turn, upgrade your eruptions and Battlecry. Shuffle 5 eruptions into your deck. Eruptions cast when drawn and deal 1 to all enemies, but they can get upgraded to deal more. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do with this, I think. There's some like Shadow Step, Breakdance interactions in Rogue. Maybe some funny elemental-y stuff happens in Rogue. The Mage split elemental, the 5-mana 6/5 that splits an elemental that you draw, sometimes hits this, could be absolutely cracked. Any ways to discover elementals become incredibly better with, additional copies of this. And even just by itself, like a 6-mana 2/10 is not horrible. Like, you want to dedicate a slot to this in hand buff Paladin? it won't have any like on-board effects really, but it's gonna be big and it's gonna upgrade your eruptions. I could see that. I could see this scene play all over, man. So I don't know, really like it. Gave it a 4 out of 5. And so that is every card that we have so far. Appreciate if you watched the video, if you stuck through till the end. Know that we went through a whole lot there. Very long video, but I really like doing these kinds of things. I like thinking ahead. I normally don't theory craft full lists, but I like having some sorts of ideas of what I'm going into with the new set. And so hopefully this, gets your brain thinking a little bit, gets the blood flowing is the simile, the metaphor I'm going to go with there. That was not the one I was trying to come up with, but I cannot for the life of me come up with whatever I was trying to say. So that will have to do. But thank you guys for watching. If you have any, thoughts, questions, opinions, anything you want to talk about in the comments about any of the new cards, about the new set, about videos, anything like that, feel free, and I will do my best to respond. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.